Okay, folks, so in this lesson we are, for at least for the beginning of it, we're going to put together the data that we collected on our last lesson where you filled out your Microsoft form and you told me whether or not you had a tongue roller or dimples or you had blue eyes or not blue eyes, etc. So that's what we did last lesson. So today we're going to amalgamate the data. That's just a really posh way of saying we're going to put it all together. So this is spelt incorrectly, so I apologize for that. And we are going to draw a bar chart and I'll help you with the beginning of that, and you're going to discuss your findings and I will help you with that. Now, if there's any issues, you come on to Zoom. I'm there now. You ask the question. So in total, we had 19 people that were surveyed, and 4 of the 19 have attached earlobes. 3 out of 19 have our widow's peak, which is the kind of V where your hairline is at the top of your forehead. We have 14 tongue rollers in the room. So wow. I am not one of those people. We have 3 individuals that have a bent little finger if they put their hand flat on the table. We have 6 blue-eyed people in our room, which surprised me. I thought we might have more. And we have 5 individuals that have dimples. We have 2 individuals which are left-hand dominant, so that's statistically right. Usually it's 10% of your population is left-handed dominant. And we have 9 individuals who have curly hair and 13 that have straight. So there is going to be a Word document which have all these graphs there for you, and this table will be in here. Now you're either lucky enough that you can print out your table, and if not, you're going to have to write your table, so unlucky. Now to fill in our data, what you're going to do for me is we need to turn all of our data into percentages. So we have 4 people out of 19, and you divide 4 by 19 and you multiply it by 100, and it's going to give you a percentage, which in this case is 21%. Now realistically there was 15 individuals over here that had free earlobes, but a really easier way to find out what the percentage of this is 100 subtract 21, and that's going to give us 79. Or you can do 15 divided by 19 and multiply by 100 if that floats your boat. So here, just to show you again, it's 3 divided by 19 multiplied by 100 for our widow's peak, and that gives 16%. And here it is 100, take away 16%, and it's going to give me 84%. Now you are going to do that for the tongue rollers, for the bent little fingers, the blue eyes, the lovely dimples, the left-handedness, and the curly hairs, for all of those traits, both sides. When you have done that, one of the good things about this particular graph is we don't actually need fancy smancy graph paper. We can end up doing it with lined paper. Now, I'm not going to have enough room to put in all of my 8 bars, but I'll do the attached earlobes and the widow's peak. You're still going to have to draw them in your graph. So what you are going to draw for me is you're going to put a line with a ruler in pencil down across for your Y, and this is for my X. So down here, this is going to be my characteristic. And when we are done, we're going to have 8 bars. And here, this is going to be 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100%. And you're going to go back and look at your data, and we're going to draw things as 1 bar. So we are going to look at the earlobe, whether I'm attached or whether I am free. So you're going to draw 1 big bar like this, and for our attached it was 21%, so you have to just have a good estimate with your eye. So this is 21, and you can color it in if you want, but you can label it up. This is attached and this is free. And if you want to put in earlobes, so we have the rest in the bigger side of the box. So I'm going to do the widow's peak one. So again, you're going to have 8 bars when you are done, and you might like to color in your bars in color so that you can see where this line is. I will color in a second. So for the widow's peak, we had 16%. So 16% is going to be a little bit more than halfway. So I go like this, and this is my widow's peak. And again, you're going to be way neater than me because you are great. And here, this one is going to be your straight hairline. So again, you are putting the data in with rulers, so you're not going to have the wobble that I have. I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting, wrong choice of color. We will go green. So you might decide you're going to color in your little bar down here. The coloring is not essential. Do it if you wish. The other thing that you can do sometimes that just makes things easier is if you get your pen and you might decide you're just going to go like that, and if you want to color in that. So you're going to have 8 peaks when you are done, or 8 bars when you are done, and they're going to be subdivided on the basis of the percentage that you found when you did your maths. Ooh, I'm a bad person. We forgot to label up over here. So this is just going to be percentage frequency, we're going to call it. So we have 21% frequency in our class of attached earlobes, 79% of free earlobes. Okay, so now that that's done, underneath your graph, you are going to discuss our data for me. So you need to look at the table or look at the graph, and what I want you to do is rank for me the most dominant traits in our class. So number 1, that is the most dominant trait. So that's going to be the thing with the biggest percentage. So most dominant trait is number 1, and you're going to tell me what it is. So that is going to be the thing that has the biggest percentage. And then you're going to go down, and number 2, what is the trait? So blah de blah de blah, and it might be 84%. It may be that you have 2 traits that have the same percentage, so then they would both be second, and then you would go to 4, and you go on down until you get to 10 in terms of our dominant trait. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is just at the very end is write me a sentence. So is this data expected? All of these different things, is that expected? So as I told you, left-handedness is definitely in the right realm. You could have a quick Google, like tongue rollers. Should we have that much percentage of tongue rollers? Is it that dominant? But give me something. A summarizing sentence about which one you found the most interesting, unexpected. So it's either the most interesting or most unexpected. I will take unexpected. And while that is great, you need to tell me why. And you might have to use Google to help you answer that question. And again, it has to be in your own words. I am not interested in Wikipedia copy and paste. Okay, so that is that little section. So if you want to pause, go away, get that done now. And again, as I say, the Word document will have all of this information in it for you to be able to follow, so you don't quite need the video. Okay, so in the second half now, we're going to work out, at least understand how genes are passed on. That's not written correctly. And how to predict what genes offspring might get. So offspring, we've said, is just a posh word for babies. So figure out what genes mom gives you, what genes dad gives you, and what did you end up with. So we did a little bit of this when you did your little field study for the sickle cell anemia. So in terms of reproduction, we've done this already. You get a little package of DNA in mum's egg and a package of DNA in dad's sperm. And when they get together, they make you. And we've said that first cell is called a zygote. So if you want to draw in for yourself what I'm highlighting in red. So we're get 23 chromosomes from your mum and 23 chromosomes from your dad. And when they get together, that zygote, we called it. So this time I'm going to just leave the cell empty like this. So our zygote, you now get 46 chromosomes. And half of them come from mum and half of them come from dad. And eventually they make you. So we're not going to draw you. You can draw yourself as a stick figure, whichever version you would like to be. But smiley hair, lovely curls, versus... Okay, so eventually that's going to make you, and you come with 46 chromosomes. So we call it variation in genetics, and all that means is just differences. But variations because a zygote gets 23 chromosomes from mum and 23 chromosomes from dad, and we get 46 chromosomes in the offspring. Now, the 23 chromosomes you got from your mum are very different to the 23 chromosomes your mum gave to any siblings you may have, and similarly with your dad. So that's another reason for this thing called variation. Okay, and the next thing that we just have to know if we're talking about chromosomes, well, they are pieces of DNA. So this is your genetic information is stored in your DNA. It stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, but everyone just calls it DNA. And on these chromosomes are our genes. So a really simple diagram is, this is our cell with our nucleus. And from our nucleus, you can actually see them underneath microscopes. These little X's, they look like X's. So this is our cell. This is a chromosome, and they look like X's when your cells are dividing, doing stuff. But if we were to take one single chromosome, and I'm going to change the color of my pen, along that chromosome you will have genes for different things. So for your height, for your eye color, for your curly hair, your tongue rollingness, all of those things are going to be present on different chromosomes, because remember now you have 23 pairs, so that's a lot of genes. So this orange stuff here are genes. So these are the little diagrams that I would like for you to put in. So we have a cell, and in your nucleus you have chromosomes. They look like X's, as we've said, and if you were to look at them when they're not dividing, we draw them as single lines and we say they all have genes. So in reality, for this little diagram over here, there are these X's all the way, these genes all the way down it. I'm just showing it very simply here by just taking one part of the X. Okay, so this is a picture of blood. These guys are our normal red blood cells. These are our white cells. So these are the guys that will make antibodies, or they'll engulf pathogens like bacteria, viruses and fungi. And these little green guys here are our platelets. And you can see that in this blood sample there are these funny shaped red blood cells. And this is what causes sickle cell anemia. So this is Pamela's story the last day. And if you imagine this trying to go through one cell thick, these little guys can squeeze in together, the sides can come in together and get really, really small, but these ones are such a funky shape that they can block your blood vessels, they can cause stroke, brain damage, all sorts of not very nice things. So using sickle cell anemia as an example, it's controlled by a gene, and the gene has two versions. So in genetics, we call one version the dominant version, and usually dominant genes produce normal individuals, so they don't have sickle cell anemia, but they use capital letters. So this is a capital letter. If you're a geneticist, they will use capital letters to dictate that this is a dominant gene. And then there's a non-dominant version, and we use this word, it's called recessive. And if you have the recessive gene, you will have sickle cell anemia. And there's a little caveat to that. So usually recessive is always with a small letter, is how that they would use it. Now, so this information is normally, I would write it like in this shorthand. So big S is equal to normal, and this is dominant, and small s is equal to, you'd have sickle cell anemia, and it's a recessive gene. Now, the dominant version, if it's present, prevents the recessive version of the gene from working, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But remember, you get a gene from mum and a gene from dad. So if the dominant is present, is one of the genes you got from your parents is dominant, it really doesn't matter what your second gene is, you will be normal. The only time it matters is if the second gene is recessive, then you're going to be what's called a carrier. And the opposite definition is the recessive will only work if the dominant is not present. So I'm going to explain what that means now. Okay, so make sure you've taken all the pieces of information down for yourself. So what does this mean? So there's 3 possible combinations of genes you can get from mom and dad. So if we say mom and if we say dad. So if mom is a big S, and I'm going to make my big S's curly. So you get S and S, and this makes you. You are big S, you are normal. Now that begs to be seen, but in terms of sickle cell anemia, you are normal. If mom or dad, and it doesn't really matter which is which, so we'll say if mom is going to give you, in this example, a small s, and dad is going to give you a big S, then together, and we always write big first, and big and small, you are normal, but you're going to be what's called a carrier. So you don't have sickle cell anemia, but you might just give it to your babies. And the other option is that, and now this could be, in this second example, mum could be the big S and dad could be the small s, but it's just you get one big S and one small s, so one recessive and one dominant. And in the last example, if both parents would have sickle cell anemia, and if they have a baby, which is going to be you in this instant, you will have sickle cell anemia. So that is how it works. Your mom gives you one half of a gene, your dad gives you another half, and then they fight it out. And we said in terms of our definitions earlier that if the dominant is present, it stops the recessive from working. So in this scenario, the dominant is present, and that's why you're normal, because now this can't work. And for the recessive, we said the recessive will only work if the dominant is not present. So here there are no dominants. It's only two small s's. There's no dominant gene there. So that individual will have sickle cell anemia. Okay, so for normal individuals with the gene big S, each parent gives them a dominant gene. So that's this line up here. For people with sickle cell anemia, each parent gives them a recessive small s gene. So that is this example here. And then the last one, some cases normal individuals can be carriers. So they get one big S from a parent and a small s from a parent. As we've said, the dominant S, if present, will always show through. So that makes them normal, but it also makes them carriers. So I have friends in the US, and when they go dating, whether or not they've decided they're going to be together forever, they actually go and they get genetically tested to work out that if they were going to get together, what would be the chances of certain of their children having certain diseases. So they want to find out, are they carriers of anything, which really kills romance as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so in terms of our example, this one line down here is our middle example here. Okay, so if you need to go back and listen to it again, please do. Now, I'll do one with you, I'll do two with you, and there's one for homework, and we're going to see, you can always pause and see, can you do it yourself? So we need to work out the three combinations for eye color. So if you have two big B's, what color are your eyes? If you have a big B, small b, what color are your eyes? And if you have two small b's, what color are your eyes? So that's what we're going to try and figure out here. So we have these three scenarios. So you kind of got to talk to yourself a little bit. So I have a big B, and big B is brown. And big B, if the big B is there, it is always going to be present. So in this case, brown eyes, because the recessive, it doesn't get to be seen. But you can pass that gene on to your babies. So big B is again two dominants. There's no recessive there, but dominant always shows through. So if you go to those genes, you're a brown-eyed individual. And small b is blue, and if there's only two small b's, then the blue definitely gets to be seen through. Okay, so we try one more, because this doesn't just happen for eye color in animals, it also happens in plants. So we have tall is big T is our dominant gene versus dwarf, small t is our recessive. So you're going to work out for me what these plants are going to look like. So pause now for yourself and give it a go, and then play to see, did you get it right? So here we have big T, small t, and the rule is big T is dominant. It's always going to show through. So these plants are going to be tall. In the second example, it's big T. So again, that is the dominant trait. they're going to be tall. And our last example is small t. There is no dominant around, so you're going to see the recessive trait. These are going to be dwarf plants. Now you're going to just do this one yourself for flower color. So red is a dominant gene, white is a recessive gene, and can you work out for me what are, I didn't change my thing, what are the colors of these particular plants? So we have small r, big R, small r, and big R, big R. So you're going to do those for homework. They're a question in your class notebook page, and we'll see how you get on. Impress me with your greatness. Okay, so moving on, we are going to look at relationships in families. I'm going to use the Simpsons to do it because they are probably the most famous family. Everybody knows who they are. So we have Mum and Dad, Marge and Homer. We have children, Bart, Lisa and Maggie. So if we are to put these guys and show how they're related to each other in a really simple diagram, we would have Homer and Marge together, and we would have this line that joins them together. So in their instance, it does mean that they are married, but essentially for what we're doing, it means that they've gotten together and they've had babies. So this is how you show their babies then. You draw a line down from them with 3 prongs for each of their 3 children. So we know now that Marge and Homer have had babies, and they have 3 offspring because they drop down from them. And you can build, if you know families, you can build on this chart. So we're going to add in over here, Grandpa Abe and Mona. They got together and had babies. They had 2 sons. They have Homer and they have Herb Powell. So this is also testing your ability to how much Simpsons have you watched. So for Marge has 2 sisters, Patty and Selma, and we're putting in their parents. So Mr. Bouvier we've never heard about, but Mom Jackie got together, had babies, and away we go. So in reality, these charts are called pedigree charts, and we show them in a slightly different way. So we don't use the pictures of the cartoon characters. We put them in like this. So we use circles and squares, and circles mean female, squares mean male, and then we make them colored to decide what trait do they have. So a pedigree chart, it shows the genetic history of a related group of people for a particular characteristic. So here we have a family, and the characteristic we're interested in is whether or not there's dimples or no dimples. Okay, now dimples is a dominant trait. So dimples would be a big D if you're passing on that gene. And here are some of the questions that they can ask. So what is the sex and characteristics of parent 1 and 2? So parent 1, you can see we have our key is a white circle. So parent 1 is female and no dimples. And parent 2 is a male with dimples. So our second question, how are 3, 4 and 5 related to 1 and 2? So because it's a drop down line, these are the children of 1 and 2. What is 6 to 7 and 8? So 6 to 7 and 8. So in this chart, child 5 has gotten together with person 6, and they've had children 7 and 8. So 6 is the father because it is a square. So it's the father to 7 and 8. What is the sex and characteristics of 7 and 8? So 7 over here is male and dimples. And 8 is female and no dimples. So they will always give you a key that you will be able to figure stuff out. And you just have to be able to read the lines. So this is have babies. If it goes across, and the drop down is these are the kids. So you just need to be able to read it. So of kids 3, 4 and 5, only 5 has procreated and had more babies. So this and the SEC have asked it. So from looking at the children of number 2, could you work out, is 2 big D or is 2 small d? So this is where you have to have a look. So I'm going to write it just up here. So I have 3 possible combinations of letters. So if D is dominant, this means dimples, this means dimples, and this means no dimples. So this mum over here is always going to give a small d. Always. So by looking at 3, 4, and 5, can we work out, is dad here this or this? So if dad was just big D and he was just giving big D to all of his babies, then there is no way he could have a child that has dimples, because the offspring should all be big D, small d from that, and that is not the case. So in this instance, because dad had a baby that has dimples, dad must be a mix. He must have one of each genes to give to his baby. So in this one, he gave big D and mum gave small d. In this one, he gave big D, mum gave small d. And in this one, he gave big D and mum gave small d. So if you have a totally recessive kid, the dad has to be a carrier. So if you're writing from looking at offspring, is D is DD because he has a kid with no dimples. Okay, so that kid is small d, and he has to give one of the small d's. Now that is a hard question, but some of you should be capable of doing it, absolutely. So I'm going to just go through this one as well with you, or you can try it yourself. So in humans, the ability to produce the skin pigment melanin is controlled by a dominant allele big N. So lack of pigment is controlled by a recessive allele called the small n. So this is just another way of saying gene. We're not going to talk about alleles at junior cycle. So it's controlled by a dominant letter. This is what albinism looks like. It is very rare to see. So when we, in the summer, some of us get gloriously tanned, other of us go a little bit red, and then we still say pale. That has to do with the amount of melanin that's in our skin. So if you are of African origin, you have a huge amount of melanin in your skin. If we don't have any real redheads, do we, in our room? No. So if for a real proper redheaded person, they will have very little melanin in their skin. They're not quite as bad as someone with albinism. So people with albinism will literally have the white hairs in the picture. They will have the palest skin in the world that will burn, and they'll actually have red eyes because they won't even have pigment in their eyes. So this is a little pedigree chart for somebody. They're very nice here, and they've told you parents, children and grandchildren. But sex and characteristics of person 1 and 2. So in this instance, 1 is male and normal. Person 2 is female and normal. How are 7 and 8 related to 1 and 2? So it's already over here. Terrible question. So they are grandchildren. What is 4 to 7 and 8? So 4 to 7 and 8 is a male. So 4 to 7 and 8 has to be an uncle. What is the sex and characteristics of 7 and 8? So here we have a male, and he is an albino, and we have an 8 is a girl who is normal. And again, we have the bonus question. So could person 6, this person here, be big N? So again, we have the versions big N, small n. These are all normal. And it means down here, small n is albino. So if we look at what our thing has here, if this person is albino, this male, he is small n, so he's going to give an n to his babies. So one baby is going to be an n, one baby is going to be an n. And up here, the question is asking, could this person be big N, big N? So if this person was big N, the only gene he is going to give is big N to his babies. So then if that was the case, any baby he would have, this would have to be a big N, small n. This would have to be, all babies would be like this. But because this baby is an albino, so it's a small n, this dad can't be big N, because he made a small n baby. So this dad has to be a big N, small n in terms of his genes. He can't be this. All right. This is a question that you're going to have for homework, that you're going to try. It is going to be in your class notebook for yourself. So work it all out. It is on sickle cell anemia again, so you already know the 3 pairs of letters. So the big S, big S, big S, small s, and small s, and work it out. If there's any issues, I'm on Zoom. Thank you so much.